Centers, and here's Pedersen. Scores! Unbelievable. What a shot.
Off the bar! Sprint and it's given back in! It's James! It's 4-4!
Surveys, nowhere to go, and back in the end zone. Touchdown! What a catch by Tyler Lockett.
One for Thompson. Batista with a try. Deep left field. No doubt about it.
Class hero, 21st century breakdown. I once was lost but never was found. I think I'm losing what's left of my mind to the 20th century deadline.
I can't bear this heat, but hello everybody. Welcome to episode 10 of the Avid Discussers podcast. See your boys, Josh Array and Ty Party. Ty, how are you doing? How are you bearing this heat?
It's not terrible to have, it once in a while, but I'm almost ready for the rain to come back. We'll just say that.
Yeah, I got the fan on in the background because it's really hot in here, and I don't want to start sweating while we record. But let's just get into it. So the Canucks, they played their first game in like 4 months against the Winnipeg Jets, ultimately lost 4-1. And overall, the Canucks didn't play horribly. They just ran into a good goaltender in Connor Hellebuck, who was nominated for the Vezina for good reason. And it was just an exhibition game, but there was a lot to talk about. We got to see Olli Juolevi in action. Micheal Ferland played for the first time in months. Jake Virtanen didn't play. And for the first half of the game, the Canucks were pretty much doing everything right except score. But once the Jets started scoring on them, things just kind of fell apart. The defense were caught napping and all that. Markstrom probably should have had the first goal, but it is what he was being screened. But overall, it was just an exhibition. They weren't too bad. And the Wild are coming up on Sunday at 7:30. Ty, do you have anything to say about that, the exhibition game?
If I'm looking at it, the first goal from Markstrom, he's got to fight harder to track that puck. But you know what? It happens. We'll just say that. It's not out of the ordinary for that to happen. I don't quite remember what that second goal was. But I know the third one was mostly Pearson's fault, I think. And I say that because even though they screwed the breakout up, he's got to fight harder to get back. Otherwise, you basically leave your goaltender out to dry. And yeah, Markstrom could have stopped the third shot, but you're leaving your goaltender out to dry again. The second goal was the 2-on-1 with the rebound control. I mean, that just happens. That was a perfectly placed shot by I think it was Laine or whoever scored it. No, Laine set up the shot. That's what it was. Winnipeg's one of those teams that they don't. When you look at them by the numbers, you wouldn't think that they're good, but they just play such a simple brand of hockey, and they don't make many mistakes, and they've got a very good goaltender. That they're just a tough team to play against, as a young team. And the Canucks, I thought they played fine. It's just they didn't play great. We'll say that.
Have to agree there. And yeah, the Jets have always been a problem for the Canucks, and thankfully they're not playing them in the qualifying round, or else, excuse me, it would be a very different story. And thank God the Wild don't have Connor Hellebuck, and they have Devin Dubnyk and Alex Stalock in there. But the Canucks they didn't play bad, but they weren't great either. So there were these like mistakes, like the defensive mistakes and all that that happened. But it was just exhibition. But let's move on to the Wild, and they played an exhibition game against the Colorado Avalanche, where they lost 3-2. And Ty, you have the numbers for this, so take us away with this.
When you look at the Wild, they stood toe for toe against the Avalanche, and I mean that's if you're looking at teams coming in hot, I mean that's not a good sign, even though it's a one game sample, because your whole thing was that you're going to be able to catch the Wild off guard because they're an older team. But I don't know. That's the thing. You can't put too much stock into an exhibition game, but at the same time, like the Zuccarello line, they played really well, and that's the line that worries me the most. Probably going to be matched up against that Ferland and Gaudette line. That's the line that probably scares me the most of anybody in the series for the Wild. Stahl line, they played really well, and they were matched up against the Kadri line, if I'm correct. And they made the Kadri line. They made them work for their money. 60% Corsi. They scored a goal. I mean, when you're looking at it as the Wild have like 2 second lines, maybe even 3 if you count that Galchenyuk line, but they don't have the top end talent. So I think when I look at it, that the Canucks have the top end talent to beat them. That's kind of how I viewed how the Canucks played. Really was how we kind of expect them to play, though, is that their top 6 was gonna play really well, and they did. But the bottom 6 pretty much performed how we'd expect them to. Not anything spectacular, but that's where the Wild are going to capitalize their chances. And again, we've talked about this since March is can your top 6 cover up what your bottom 6 is doing? That's going to be the big thing for the Canucks. I mean, Markstrom didn't play terrible, but he didn't look like the Markstrom we saw, before he got hurt. I just went back and watched that third goal, and yeah, he left him out to dry, but that's a save you have to make as a goaltender. It's not a high quality shot, and you've got to be able to make that stop, and it's a stop he normally makes 9 out of 10 times when he's healthy. So is that the big thing? The big thing is, was that just a fluke game for the Canucks? And hopefully Travis Green gets him ready to play, but the Wild certainly look good in that exhibition. I'll say that.
Yeah, they didn't look I didn't see it all, but I saw at the tail end of the game and the highlights. The Wild look way better than I thought they would be in the game against Colorado. The Canucks have to be careful of Kevin Fiala, of course, we've mentioned, and that first line of Greenway, Eric Stahl. I think they can be effective, and they show that again in the exhibition. That third line, I think that's going to be the most concerning, in my opinion, for the Canucks, of Foligno, Galchenyuk, and Zuccarello. They got that line can bite you in the ass, like seriously. Like we've seen it when the Canucks played the Minnesota Wild in the regular season. Galchenyuk, Zuccarello, and Foligno were scoring and all over them. And the Wild have the better bottom 6 depth than the Canucks, and that's the part that could really hurt them. And the Wild have the better defense too, like Jared Spurgeon, Ryan Suter, Jonas Brodin, Matt Dumba, to make up the top 4. And those guys are looking to shut down Elias Pettersson and Brock Besser, JT Miller, and they can. And they guys like Spurgeon and Dumba and Brodin, they provide offense from the blue line, especially on the special teams, and that can hurt too. But it's clear that the Canucks have the advantage in goal, as Devin Dubnyk and Alex Stalock have had mediocre seasons, while Markstrom, we all know, has like an MVP Vezina caliber season. So we've been saying this like all like the last few weeks that the Wild shouldn't be taken lightly because as people say, like, oh, the Wild are the most boring team in hockey and all that. Well, I kind of have to agree, but they can really surprise you in many ways, and they can really make life difficult if you're playing against them. So if the Canucks take them too lightly, life will be difficult for them.
I mean, the other thing that nobody's talking about is how good that. When you look at the Canucks, the same mistakes almost get made, and I mean, it's the same thing with that. The F3, the high forward. We'll say that for people that don't know the legit hockey terms of it. So the highest forward, two forwards generally like lower down in the zone. That third forward, if your defenseman's jumping into the play, has to cover for the defense. And I saw that mistake. It's made all season. That guy does not cover for defense. And then, if the other team gets it, chip it off the boards, and it's a 2-on-1 coming back the other way. And I saw Tyler Myers make that mistake. And as much as I crap on him, let's just say, he makes that mistake, way more than anybody I can see on the Canucks. That's a big question. You can't make that mistake in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. You can't make those type of mistakes in the playoffs, like those defensive gaffes, all those turnovers, because those could really hurt you and hurt against the Jets. And Myers is prone to making these defensive mistakes. So if he doesn't figure it out, then the Canucks could be in trouble. And so I'm sticking with my prediction that the Canucks will beat the Wild in 5, but I think it's going to be a very tight series. Well, no, I don't say very tight, but it'll be tight, and it'll be back and forth. And but overall, I think the Canucks have the better team on paper, at least. They have the better goaltending, the better offense, but the Wild have the better defense and bottom 6 depth. So it should be a fun series, and hopefully the Canucks could get past the Wild and move on to the next round. And another big story from the exhibition game against the Jets was Jake Virtanen, who didn't play. And according to Travis Green, that he just set up the lineup that they thought would win the game, and Virtanen wasn't part of it. So that sounds very, what's the word? Sketchy. And this has been a big question: is Virtanen done in Vancouver? We're not going to be able to see him against the Wild? Is this it? Ty, do you have anything to say about this?
I mean, when you look at Virtanen, I mean, this is the same thing we've had for how many years? Is how much of this stuff's kind of been handed to him. It doesn't feel like he's worked really hard to earn what he's had. Let's just say. Maybe people will disagree with me there, but it's like he makes the team straight out of camp pretty much after like. I don't know specific numbers from the WHL, but I was listening to JD Burke talk about this morning. Is that he made the NHL fairly easy, and the management's kind of just handed him everything he really had. And when they want to expect more, he doesn't really come through that way because he just doesn't have the work ethic. Almost it feels like he's like, okay, I've made the show, and that's what I'm gonna do. And then you got a guy like Micheal Ferland who's worked really hard to get everything he's asked for. He's worked really hard to come back from this injury. Who are you going to take at this point? And the other point I've been seeing brought up a lot lately is with the Canucks cap problem is Virtanen's not a guy they can really afford to overpay, for better lack of terms. So say he makes $3 million, it's market value, but when we talk about market value, is he getting it more because of what guys, what he performs, what he brings to the table gets brought up more in contract conversations versus the stuff that he's kind of terrible at in terms of his defense, and his even strength offense for that matter. Outside of the goals, he's really not driving play a lot. He's not generating a lot of chances. He's scoring, but he's not a very valuable player when you talk about the team because his defense is so terrible. It kind of takes away any of the offensive ability he really brings to the table. And the big thing is he's gonna make $3 million. I'd rather pay Josh Levo $3 million at this point, because when you look at Josh Levo, he drives play offensively, he limits chances defensively, a very good third liner, and he's probably most likely going to be cheaper because of that. I think he's projected around $2 million. I'd rather play that than Jake Virtanen, because Jake Virtanen, he may score 20 goals, and he may be big and he can hit, but when it comes to putting everything together, he just doesn't have the work ethic or hockey IQ to really put everything together. If he put everything together, I think he's probably making $9 million playing on the first line, because he's so damn good. But he just doesn't put it together, and he doesn't have the work ethic or the hockey IQ to really put everything together. So I don't think we can really expect that.
I remember when Virtanen was first drafted in 2014. I remember watching the broadcast, and it was either Bob McKenzie or Craig Button. One of those guys said Virtanen has a lot of upside and a ton of potential, which he both had. He had potential to be a very good NHL player, but unfortunately, he hasn't lived up to his draft ranking. And you've already mentioned his work ethic and his defensive issues. Like, sure, he can score goals, could have scored 20. He can hit, can be an agitator, but his defensive issues and his consistency are huge factors. Red flags in his game. And Don Taylor said yesterday that he has a feeling that they're done with Virtanen, and Travis Green doesn't believe in him and doesn't think that the Canucks are going to commit to Jake. And Jake was a machine in junior, like a 40-goal scorer, like one of the best power forwards in the WHL with the Calgary Hitmen. And at training camp, there was apparently there was some issues with him and Travis Green. Like, he showed up out of shape again or something. He wasn't meeting Travis's expectations. But it's been like this for years with Virtanen. Like, we see flashes of brilliance, but then he just goes quiet, or he has off ice / work ethic / attitude issues. And if the Canucks are done with Virtanen, it sucks, but hockey is a business, and if you can't put into the work, and if you can't stay consistent in the NHL or with any NHL team, well, why bother, right? Same goes for anything in life. He had so much potential. Maybe the pressure got into him as being a high draft pick and pretty much a hometown kid. But if Virtanen doesn't play like a single game against the Wild, maybe it's goodbye. And maybe the Canucks give that $3 million to someone like Josh Levo. But I hope Virtanen gets some action against the Wild in the play-ins, and hope he could be that power forward that we all want him to be, because he pretty much is built for the playoffs. Or no, not built. He's not a machine, but made for the playoffs. But I don't know. It's another tough situation. And but on a lighter note, Micheal Ferland also played against the Jets, and we didn't look too bad. And he wasn't as physical yet. Maybe he's saving it up for the Wild. But he's been through a lot in the past few months with all his concussions and his recovery back. he had a good camp, and I think he could be a very good player for the Canucks against the Wild, and I expect him to be sort of that 2015 Ferland when he was with the Flames. And Olli Juolevi also played against the Jets, and for the first time, we have actually seen him in a Canucks uniform. It was exhibition, but it felt like an actual game. He had his first shot on net. He drove the play well. He had he looked good on the boards, especially on the corners. He had a few mistakes defensively, but overall, he wasn't too bad. He wasn't great, but he was good. Fantenberg did not have a good game, and there's talk that among fans saying maybe Juolevi should slot in for Fantenberg. I'm not sure if they're going to do that. Maybe after like game 1 or game 2, that could be a possibility, but you never know. So, Ty, do you have anything to say about Ferland and Juolevi?
I thought Ferland played fine. I didn't think he played great, but I mean, he's a difference maker in the playoffs. If he's playing physical, 38% Corsi, so I mean, it's not terrible. Like, it's not good, but it's not like it's like better than JB called. I mean, at the same time, I thought Juolevi played fine. The only thing is, many people are citing his numbers, but he only played like 6 minutes in the game, and it's like the entire time that he only played. So, like, I mean, yeah, he had good numbers in that when he's on the ice there, but I mean, he really didn't play very much. So I don't think we can really judge a lot based on that. I think if Jordy Ben's healthy, that's his spot on the left side. That's the only. I mean, that's my opinion at least. I think if he's healthy, they just go with him instead of Fantenberg. I didn't think Fantenberg played terrible. Many people are just talking like. I think there was a couple defensive mistakes he made, but for the most part, his profile was pretty good in terms of, you know, everything I'm looking at, like 70% expected goals for. He was on the ice for that one goal. You know, the only thing is when you're playing with Myers, you're going to get caught in tough situations on the defensive side, and I don't want to just bash Myers repeatedly. I'm just basically calling out what I see. There are times that Myers, he takes risks because of his offensive game more than, and it hurts his defensive game. And that's what that's what kind of happens when you play with him, really. And that's what, like, any defensive, any guy you play with that's on offense and he takes risks for offense. For Myers, it's pinching more often than, you know, normally a defenseman might. You're going to get caught in tough situations. And I kind of just think that, like, people see Fantenberg caught in these tough situations and they think he played terrible. But, you know, looking at his numbers, I thought he played fine. Yeah, I think he's one of the more underrated defensive defensemen on the Canucks. He gets a lot of slack because he plays with Myers like that. I think it's his spot until Jordy Ben comes back. Then, you know, you let them fight. I think for Juolevi, we kind of just let him, you know, sit and get the experience. And, you know, if he has a good camp next year, start to bring him up in these his regular season games. But in a playoff series, I think you ride with Fantenberg because he's a better defenseman at the moment. I don't have the forechecking data on Ferland, but I thought he used to be a really good forechecking forward too. So that's another thing. There wasn't a very physical game compared to, like, you know, some of the games were physical, some of them weren't. So I'd like to see the games that were physical, how those guys adjust right into it. The Canucks game was barely that looked like a preseason game. It didn't even look like a regular season game in the sense that there just wasn't any physicality. Everybody's kind of still getting their gears into it. Whereas, like, Minnesota looked like they were in regular season form. So in a sense, I worry a little bit the Canucks about that because, you know, they basically mailed it in for a little bit. And I'm not saying they mailed it in for the game, but they almost looked like they just weren't ready to play in some aspects of the game. They had good numbers in the whole bit, but just little mistakes. And that's all it takes in the playoffs. Just one little mistake of pinching here when you shouldn't. And that's a goal coming back 2-on-1 the other way. That's all I can say is you can't make those mistakes. And, hopefully they figure that out, because we've seen these mistakes made all season. At some point, it's not just the numbers I'm looking at. Like, this is eye test stuff too.
Yeah, it pretty much was a preseason game. After all, that's kind of what exhibition means. And it was just to get the players' feet wet before starting the play-in series. So let's move. I'm going to do a little FA Cup final preview for a few minutes here because I believe when you're listening to this, the FA Cup final has been played, and Chelsea or Arsenal have won the cup. And I put out a tweet yesterday that if Chelsea lose to Arsenal, I will next episode write a poem just praising Arsenal. Mark my word for this. And if by the time you're listening to this, I'm either really happy or really pissed off because Chelsea lost, and I have to write a poem praising Arsenal, and I'll have to recite it next week. So this is a big game for both teams, especially both managers, Micheal Arteta for Arsenal and Frank Lampard for Chelsea. Now, both these teams would like a trophy to have for some compensation to their seasons. Well, Arsenal are, from what I've heard, if they win the FA Cup, they get to play in the Europa League next season. And Chelsea are already going to be in the Champions League. And having a trophy for Frank Lampard as his first as manager would be the cherry on top to what has been a roller coaster of the season. Overall, Chelsea have the better forwards. Christian Pulisic, Olivier Giroud, who has claimed Wembley is his garden, and he is known for scoring at Wembley. Willian will be fit. Callum Hudson-Odoi might play. N'Golo Kante is fit on the midfield. Mateo Kovacic, probably the best Chelsea player all season. And both teams have pretty poor defenses. So this could go either way. We could see plenty of goals. But the only player that Chelsea should be scared of is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, one of the best goal scorers in the league and Arsenal's best player by far. And if he gets going, he gets going. But if Chelsea's defense could put him in his place, then they should be all good. And they better not start Kepa Arrizabalaga in the final because I've said this last week that he can't stop a ball to save his life. So they might as well start 38-year-old Willy Caballero instead, the Argentine Johnny Sins. So I believe Arsenal will have Leno in net, and it should be a fun game. And for once, it's actually on TV. I actually checked this morning that the FA Cup final will be on TV. So I'll be up early for that to let you guys know that this episode will be out, and we'll be watching the FA Cup final. So I hope Chelsea wins because I do not want to write a poem praising Arsenal next week. Why did I do this? I don't know. I really don't know. And moving closer to home, the Miami Marlins, about 11 players, from what I've heard, I guess 2 staff also, I'm not sure the exact numbers, tested positive for the virus. And as a result, a bunch of games across Major League Baseball have been postponed, which includes the Blue Jays series against the Philadelphia Phillies, because the Phillies were the last team to play the Marlins. And the MLB took an L here. And unlike the NBA, the NHL, and the MLS, they're not in a hub city. The players are actually traveling from city to city. And I think this is a poor move. They should have had a hub city like in New York or something, or maybe even Florida or Los Angeles. But it should have. They should have handled this better. And as a result, we don't get any Blue Jays baseball until Tuesday, I believe. And the Blue Jays, they look good so far. this team can hit. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. got his first home run. Bo Bichette, my favorite Blue Jay. He's got a lot of potential. And Nate Pearson, the top prospect, he looks like a potential ace. And he looked pretty good in his first time out against the World Series champion Nationals. Ty, do you have anything to say about what's going on in the baseball world?
Here's the thing about Miami that nobody's talking about is they literally had a team dinner at a strip club. That should really at that point that's a breach of, at least it's rumored. I'm pretty sure that's kind of been the supposedly that's what happened. I don't know if that's legit what happened, but that's just basically what everybody's supposedly bringing up. I don't know if it's a joke or it's just a theory. But here's the thing: if you know 5 people are tested positive and you vote for your team to say, yeah, we're fine to play, and then you go play, like you should be forfeiting these games. You should not be postponing them. Like, that's not fair to the rest of the MLB that's legitimately putting their time in for this to happen. And I think at some point you have to know. At some point you have to be like, you've got a responsibility as a player, and if you're not going to do that, then you should be forfeiting these games, and we're not postponing them. And the other thing that nobody's talking about is the PA voted to not have a hub city, even though the MLB had a plan to have a hub city and have these safety protocols. But the MLB PA voted against having them in the city there, so that they travel from city to city. So, at some point, this is your own fault because you guys voted against it. And if the MLB does not have a out for this, that's their own fault, because you should be prepared for this happened and how you're going to continue the season doing this. If you don't have an out, it's your own fault, and you're going to have to cancel the season in 2 weeks. But they should have an out. If they have an out, that's why I'm more confident than everybody else is that this goes on. If the MLB has an out for it, then they should be prepared. That's the problem. If they don't, that's their own fault. And speaking about Jays, obviously, they're playing pretty well so far. If I'm correct, they are their league average hitting right now, mostly because of their I don't know what their strikeout rate is. They rank 18th strikeout. Looking at their weighted on base average, one of the better ones. They are 22nd. The thing is about it is we don't have a big sample on them so far. They've got a lot of pieces. I think they could still make it, but they have to be a more consistent hitting team right now. They're a little bit below average. They've had some good pitching so far in some spots. Good sign from Nate Pearson so far. I watched him play my dad went and watched him play when he was down because Blue Jays single A team is the Canadians, the C's here. So he was here a couple of years ago, and he's like, this kid's going to be legit. He's going to pitch in the majors. And, I'm happy that his stuff translates over to the majors. Really good fastball, really good slider. When you look at the Jays, they've got a lot of good pitching prospects coming up, and, a lot of talent's already here. So the hitting's there. It's just a matter of when the pitching arrives.
And another big story in baseball, the Houston Astros and the Los Angeles Dodgers, they played their first series for the first time since 2017. And we all know the Astros and their actions. And Dodgers pitcher Joe Kelly, he made the headlines for throwing a fastball near Alex Bregman and taunting Carlos Correa. And because of his actions, the bench is cleared. And Kelly has been suspended for 8 games because of his actions. And honestly, the Astros hate, it's pretty much justified. They cheated. There was evidence they cheated. And that ring is tainted. And if you believe that the Astros won the 2017 World Series fair and square, wake up. Seriously, because I don't know anyone who thinks this, but I've seen from others on Twitter that that there are people saying, "Oh, the Astros, they won fair and square. They didn't cheat." Yes, they did. They did. And honestly, Joe Kelly had the right to. I didn't say he had the right to hit anybody, but um, like mocking Carlos Correa for his role in the cheating scandal. Like he put up some good entertainment for us to watch, and fortunately, I didn't see that game, but look at the highlights. It was fun, and everyone's saying that Joe Kelly's a national hero, and his suspension should be at least reduced. Because I think 8 games is a little too harsh. Ty, do you have anything to say about this?
I mean, I at some point the Astros thing will just happen for a couple weeks and they'll get hit. I thought it would have happened earlier. I mean, it is what it is. I think that the suspension was a little bit harsh, but I mean, that's kind of what you expect, really. And I look at it as that there were more than just the Astros cheating. The Astros just ended up getting a World Series out of it, and that's what people are pissed about. Because you look at like the Yankees were cheating, the Red Sox are cheating. I'm convinced the Indians were cheating at one point. I mean, it is what it is, and they'll get hit a couple of times with a fastball. And it's mostly the Dodgers. They'll be pissed because they were the ones that were robbed of it. Dodgers were a better team. It is what it is at the end of the day. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, pretty much. It is what it is. And yeah, it's just people are just pissed off that the Astros got a ring for cheating and we didn't find out for until 2 years later. And Seattle Seahawks, our favorite NFL team, they made a splash over a few days ago. They traded for safety Jamal Adams, and they sent a couple of first-round picks and Bradley McDougall to the New York Jets. And my opinion, it was quite a steep price to give up, but Adams is one of the best safeties in the NFL, and if this is what you got to do if you want your team to improve, especially that defense. And Adams is excited to be in Seattle, and giving up those two first-round picks. The Seahawks always draft better in the later rounds, so I mean it's steep, but I'm pretty much stoked that Adams is gonna be a Seahawk. Ty, you're a big football guy. You have anything to say about this on the trade?
When I look at like Adams, I think he's probably at least top 3, and I think that's like a bare minimum of how good he is. When I look at it, I think it was a market value trade. You've got a guy that's on his, he's still got 2 years on the ELC deal. You're probably gonna extend him. Well, when I look at it, like the Seahawks drafted like normally like around the 27 to 30 range around there. Maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. But I mean, relative, what's it going to take to move up to top 5 pick to get, a player of Adams quality? It's probably going to cost a first and maybe a third. So it's relatively around what you'd pay to move up. Thing with Adams, you get a couple years off his ELC deal, but that he's probably a top 3 safety. He's only like 24 years old. That it's a deal that you look at making for a numbers perspective for it to work out. He's got to be the best player in the NFL outside of a quarterback. Could that happen? Totally, because he's pretty damn good. But at some point, I look at it as those are what the numbers, but at the same time, Russell's 32. They got to make a move for try to get him a Super Bowl again. I think the other one you can't rule out is Antonio Brown with the suspension that just came out. It's going to be 8 games. You sign him for a 2-year deal, something like that, maybe even just a 1. You're going to get 8 games in the playoffs out of him. So if you can deal with him in the locker room, I think that's another move you got to look at if you're the Hawks too.
Yeah, and the steep price kind of means that they want to keep Adams in the long run. And also the Dallas Cowboys were in on him too, but they were unwilling to give up to match or offer something better than what Seattle gave up. So they backed out. And Wilson's 32, and he's still in his prime years, but how much longer? And he wants to win another Super Bowl. And moves like these show the Seahawks want to get back into that contention window and go for a Super Bowl. So, there is that possibility of Antonio Brown. But he also got that 8-game suspension, which just broke as we are recording. And we're not sure if Jadeveon Clowney would be back in Seattle. And that has been going on for months, and nothing has been mentioned that was noteworthy. Anyway, gonna head into break, and our featured guest this week is David Quadrelli of Canucks Army and Canucks Conversation. All right, everyone. Joining us this week for our featured guest is a man who's helped me, has helped me get my foot in the door in this industry, and one who's helped me improve my writing and helped me to inspire to write, and one that I've been wanting to have on the podcast for quite some time. Without further ado, we've got the managing editor of Canucks Army and half of Canucks Convo, David Quadrelli. David, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing very well. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. We're braving the heat.
Yes, that makes all of us.
Yeah. And you used to write for the Canuck Way, where you were a site expert, where you helped edit my articles as well as many others. And a year ago, you were site expert for the Canuck Way, and now you're managing editor of Canucks Army, a role which has been held by many great writers. And basically, what has the writing journey have been over the last year?
Yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a whirlwind, as I'm sure you already know. Had a very brief stint at the Hockey Writers. Didn't have the best experience there. But it was all for the best, because once I kind of left my old outlets, and nothing against the Canuck Way at all, it was just time for me to move on after a while. Once I moved on, more and more opportunities started to appear, and I've been pretty lucky with the opportunities I've been granted, and it's been a lot of sleepless nights grinding away and trying to outwork everybody else, and it's been a whirlwind for sure, but here we are.
You've also had the privilege of covering the team of the training camp and going to the arena for a little bit there, and also being on the Zoom press conferences. Looking back even a year ago, did you ever think you'd be at this point so far?
I mean, I had hope, right? And all I knew was if I just work hard, opportunities will arise. And thankfully, because I was at the Botchford Project night, I was able to gain a bit of a relationship with Canucks PR. And as the managing editor, you deal with all the PR and everything like that. So I was reaching out to them, and it was nice that I was almost reintroducing myself as the managing editor, but they already knew who I was. So it made it a lot easier to, interact with the PR team. And I think they were pretty pleased with what Chris and I did at the training camp. I don't think we ruffled any feathers or did anything that they would not want us back there in the future. So hopefully this is just the start, and hopefully we're back there soon.
And speaking of Chris, how is he as a co-host, and has he ever complained to you about your editing and criticisms or feedback?
know what? I'm probably hardest on Chris than anybody, and sometimes I feel bad with the feedback I send him. But Josh, I've edited your work. You know how I am as an editor. Like I'm honest with you, and I tell you what you need to improve on, and I try to make everybody better. And even I like to point out positives. I think there's too often it's like, oh, you formatted this wrong, and it's like, okay, but that doesn't help me as a writer at all. Or if there's no format mistakes, they're like, great work, and it's like, well, that also doesn't help me at all. So I try to give positive feedback of things I liked, and then of course things I didn't like and things that a writer can improve on. And I think I do that probably more so with Chris than anybody else, but I think anybody who writes at Canucks Army currently and has had me edit their work can probably tell you the same thing, that I try to get everybody to play to their strengths, and I try to help people understand what their strengths are, because I think I've got a pretty good eye for seeing what people are good at and what they're not so good at. So I try and steer people in the direction of things they're good at. Like Brett Lee, for example, I got to give him a shout out, because the work he's done has just been fantastic on the side of the tapes and the shift by shift analysis that he did for the Olli Juolevi game on Wednesday night. Like, that guy impresses me so much. Reminds me of a young Ryan Beach, and I think that's something Jackson McDonald, the past managing editor and a friend of mine, that's what he compared him to. And I think Beecher would agree with that analysis for sure, because yeah, the work that Brett does is just awesome. So I try to steer Brett in the direction and give him ideas of things he can do, because I know he's capable of it. So I like to challenge everybody, but definitely a little bit harder on Chris than I am anybody else. But yeah, he's a great partner, great friend of mine.
Brett Lee's just been awesome. I gotta quickly put that out there that I've really enjoyed his work. And
Totally.
with the next question, were some takeaways with that exhibition against the Jets there, even if some of them weren't very good?
Yeah, it was a game, right? It was a game. It was a National Hockey League game that they played, and it's hard to go too hard into it because the Canucks are 0-10 in their last 10 against the Jets. So it wasn't like you were expecting them to win. And, I think we can all agree that Connor Hellebuck was the main reason that the Jets won that game. If you get 33 shots off on Alex Stalock or Devin Dubnyk, whoever the Minnesota Wild choose to go with, you're more than likely going to pot a few past them with those chances that the Canucks were getting. I look at Besser having that opportunity and just missing the net. He's still getting warm. He looked great at training camp. He looked awesome in that game. But, he still has to get in game shape. So I think by the time it's Sunday night, again, this will be in a couple days here, we're getting ready. I think the Canucks are going to be ready to go. Chris is calling them sweep the Wild. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to be a close series. I think it's going to go the distance personally. But again, it's hard to go pick at everybody's performance. I think Brandon Sutter didn't look great in that game. I think he's the only person you could really say was questionable of should this guy be in the lineup. I liked what Travis Green did in putting Ferland in. I've said all throughout camp, Ferland's looked great. Obviously he was letting up a bit on hits, but you could tell if he wanted to, he could have finished his hits a lot harder. And I think he's playing really smart. He's playing a really smart game. He's picking his spots, and he's throwing a lot of hits. He's finishing every check, and I think that's just an example of what we're going to see against the Wild, is just him being that wrecking ball that we know he can be. And for guys I was impressed with, I've really been impressed with Olli Juolevi. I mean, some people have been impressed a lot more than me, but I think I've kind of equated it to what it should actually be with how high we should be on this guy. He's not challenging for the 6th D spot. I don't think he outplayed Fantenberg in that game. And if he did, it's because he was in a sheltered role. You have to understand that, right? Fantenberg was playing tougher minutes than Juolevi in that game against the Jets. Again, the Fantenberg-Myers pairing, that doesn't work for anybody except for the opposing team's forwards. So, I mean, yeah, I don't think Juolevi is going to be challenging for the 6th D spot. But again, Jordy Ben just had his child, right? Congrats to him, by the way. But he's going to come back, and he's going to quarantine for 4 days, right? So that's going to be looking at him coming back in game 4, I believe, at the earliest. I think that's the earliest he can come back is game 4, because I don't think he's coming back today. I'm trying to find out when he's coming back, but haven't heard anything yet. So, I think Olli Juolevi has done a great job, though. He's impressed me throughout camp. He impressed the coaching staff. It was a pleasant surprise for, I think, everybody, how well Juolevi played at camp, and he earned himself a spot. Guys, he came in and he was lower on the depth chart than Guillaume Brisebois and Ashton Sautner, right? These are two guys who've played NHL games under Travis Green, and it's almost a no-brainer to bring them to Edmonton. You just think like, okay, like, Juolevi played great, that's awesome, but Travis being Travis, what we know about him, he's going to want to go with the experience, and it's a playoff game. He's going to want the experience, but no, he was that impressed with Juolevi, and I think that's just a testament to how well he's played. Again, like, there's still some work to be done. I could see the Canucks kind of flirting with the idea of letting him come in and play that third D spot and hopefully move Jordy Ben out. Like, there's so many moving parts to it. But again, I think Olli Juolevi showed that he's a lot further along than I think a lot of people thought he was.
And another story from the exhibition game was Jake Virtanen, who did not play. Given that and the comments from Travis Green, do you think it was fair or harsh? And do you even see him in the lineup against Minnesota?
So you know what? I think the comments were absolutely fair. The thing I found really interesting about the comments was how it appears as though Jim Benning and Travis aren't really on the same page with that. Maybe they got their wires crossed a little bit. They didn't communicate with what the actual lineup decision was. But again, like, Virtanen to Travis Green isn't a guy who he thinks can help the Canucks win in the long term. But I think, a lot of people have really strong opinions on this. I think one thing that not a lot of people are talking about, and Harmon and I were talking about this, is how much better Virtanen makes the second power play unit. Is that enough to warrant a spot in the lineup? His 5-on-5 play in the power play, is that enough? Because, I'd say it almost is, because people are saying the reason Brandon Sutter and Louis Eriksson should be in the lineup over Virtanen is because they have penalty killing ability. Well, those special teams, there's two sides to it, right? And if Brandon Sutter's taking penalties like he did against the Jets, like, again, I don't see a much of a need for the fourth line in this series. I said it on our podcast. Like, I just think with the way the Wild are structured with their four lines, like, the fourth line's gonna be playing pretty few minutes, and I don't think keeping Sutter around is that vital. But again, like, what do I think Travis is gonna do? I'm thinking that if Sutter is going to come out in game one, which I still don't think he is, I think he'll be in the lineup. I think the lineup you saw against the Jets, I think it's gonna be the exact same against the Wild. I really think if he were to pull Sutter out for anybody, it'd be Louis Eriksson. If you think about it, like, Louis Eriksson's likely the Canucks' best fourth liner. And, he costs a lot of money, but he has that two-way game, and, he kills penalties. Jake doesn't. And I think that's going to be something that plays into it. So, I mean, we'll have to wait and see. But from what I've seen and what I've gathered, it doesn't appear like Jake's going to be in the lineup for game one.
And you wrote a good article on Juolevi and how he impressed. Jeez. The coaching staff and moved on the Canucks depth chart. Would you expect to see him over Fantenberg?
You know what? So I wouldn't. I think Fantenberg right now is probably playing. He played well, but I think we've seen better from Fantenberg. I think Fantenberg was much better at the start of the year than he was toward the end, and even in that game against the Jets, like, I think we've seen a better Fantenberg. So I equate that with that's not Fantenberg at his best, but what we're seeing from Juolevi is Juolevi at his best. So I think the coaching staff is going to elect to go with Fantenberg until Jordy Ben gets back. So I think it's a good story for Juolevi. It's not a loss for Juolevi, I don't think, if he doesn't get into a game here. Like, I think he's done so much. Like, he can only be proud of what he's done at this point, right? And I know, NHLers don't like to sit and bask in the glory, but he impressed everybody. Like, this has to be seen as a win for Juolevi. Like, he impressed the coaching staff, he impressed the fan base, he impressed the media. Like, everybody's talking about this kid, it seems like. And again, like, he hasn't done much yet, but for what we thought he was going to do, he impressed everybody. So I think it's good to see, but again, I don't think Fantenberg's going to be taken out in favor of Juolevi.
Micheal Ferland played against the Jets, and he had a strong camp. And what were your impressions of him in that game and also at training camp?
Yeah, so I thought Ferland, there was obviously that worry on day one of camp when he was unfit to play. God knows what that means. And then he was skating with the second group, looked good. But again, How much do you put into him skating with 6 other guys on the ice, doing pretty sheltered drills? There was question marks around Michael Ferland. And like Jeff Patterson was saying the whole time, like, I wasn't sure if the organization was viewing him as an actual option when it came to game time, just because they haven't seen enough from him. But then he comes as soon as he came into the scrimmage, he was skating hard, he was making contact, he was playing the style that the Canucks paid for. Like, this is what the Canucks want from Michael Ferland, like skating hard, finishing every check. And of course at camp, he wasn't nailing guys into the boards. There were a few instances where he was hitting guys pretty hard, but again, like, he's playing smart. You can tell this is a guy who knows he's had a few concussions, but again, like, the great part about it is, and something I found super interesting is, when he had those symptoms in Utica, he said it was because of the bodies whizzing around, and it was like seeing those bodies flying around so fast was what made him dizzy and brought the concussion symptoms. That's not a good sign by any means, but like he said, it wasn't the physicality that hurt him. So in his own words, he said, when we get going, I'm going to be hitting, and I'm going to be hitting hard. And I mean, if that doesn't excite Canucks fans, I don't know what will when it comes to Michael Ferland. I think he's going to be a difference maker in the series. I really do.
What are some things the Canucks need to be careful with when they play the Wild?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the dump and chase, I think, is the biggest threat when you look at the Wild. There's very few teams in the NHL that still use the dump and chase, and there's even fewer that use the dump and chase to perfection, as the Wild do. And it looks like they're one of the only teams that have perfected that, right? And I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Quinn Hughes. And I mean, again, I got to give credit to Brett Lee, because he had an analysis of this video of the Wild doing the dump and chase to perfection. And as soon as Quinn turns around, and any defenseman for that matter, as soon as they turn around, there's 2 Wild forecheckers on them. And that's not easy to defend against, even when you're Quinn Hughes. So then you look at that and you wonder, okay, what's going to happen when Oscar Fantenberg's got these guys bearing down on him, right? Like, it's not easy. It's not going to be an easy series. I really don't. I think a lot of people are thinking it's going to be a cakewalk. They should beat them because they have the upper hand in net and the forward groups. But again, like, this isn't going to be a cakewalk by any means. And I mean, when you talk about threats, there's obviously the dump and chase. That's a strategy. But threats on the team, like Jared Spurgeon might be the best defender in this series. I think, Quinn Hughes is fantastic. And, personally, Hughes is who I'd go with as being the best defender. But there's a lot of people who have made a very good case for why Jared Spurgeon is the best defender in this series. So, I mean, you can't really sleep on that top 4 defense that Minnesota has. Because, again, like, these guys are battle tested and they know what they're doing. And I mean, in comparison to the Canucks defense, like, it's not even close.
Antoine Roussel went on 650 a few days ago and said the Canucks have the best player at every position over the Wild. Is he right?
You've got to love Antoine Roussel, eh? Yeah, I mean, the players he chose to mention wasn't necessarily wrong. I'd say Jay Beagle's an elite penalty killer, sure. So he's not wrong about that. He's not wrong about Jacob Markstrom being a better goaltender either. He was talking about defensive defensemen, and he went with Chris Tanev. I think that might be a bit of it. That was probably the boldest take he put out there. But again, like, that's just a case of Roussel being Roussel. I think, he's a great quote, and he's a lot of fun to talk to. And I mean, yeah, it's cool that he said that. I think, like, ruffle a few feathers. There's not enough of that in the NHL, I don't think. Like, you sometimes see that in other sports, like even the MLB, the NBA, really every other sport, you see a lot of that, I think. And you just don't see that as much in the NHL. So I think it was cool that Roussel did that. But yeah, I mean, obviously that's a guy playing for the team. He's a little bit biased, but yeah, I don't think he's too far off in his analysis there.
If you could pick one player, who would the X factor be against the Wild, like for the Canucks?
I'd say it's Elias Pettersson. I've made the case before. I think he was their MVP this year. I think you take him out, it's more of an impact than it was without Jacob Markstrom on the team. And I mean, Elias Pettersson looks motivated. He looks fast. Like, if there's one, like, I'd say he was their best player against Winnipeg. Just the confidence that he showed, and everything that he did against the Jets. He looked awesome in all ends of the ice. And I mean, he's been talking about it for months, how he feels stronger, he feels faster. And I mean, when I look at who's going to be the X factor, like, I look no further than Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson, 2 guys on ELCs, which is saying something about this team. Like, these guys are very, very good players, and the Canucks definitely are lucky to have them. And I mean, yeah, I think those 2 guys are the ones that I say are going to be the X factor. As for my dark horse X factor, I'd probably say it could be Micheal Ferland.
And overall, do you like the Canucks' chances in beating the Wild, and how many games do you predict the series will go?
Yeah, I think they've got a good chance of beating them. I think it's going to go to 5 games personally.
What other play-in series interests you outside the Canucks?
Yeah, you know what? Like, I've been watching a lot of exhibitions, right? And I was watching some of the Wild's games, and I thought it was pretty interesting how they basically got like lit up. Like, they didn't play great in that game. And I mean, is that something that we could see in the series? But I was watching that game, and for games that I'll be watching, I'm really excited to see the Rangers Hurricanes. I think that's a series you have to keep your eye on. Like, Artemi Panarin first playoff series with the Rangers. Like, keep in mind, like, the Rangers were a team that were said to be rebuilding not too long ago, right? And I mean, they've got Capo Caco coming up, and he's going to be even better next year and the year after that. Like, there's a lot of series that interest me for sure. I think the Penguins and the Canadiens are going to be a good series as well. Again, like, can the Canadiens pull off the upset by having Carey Price in net? Like, a hot Carey Price, like, what do you want? Do you want a hot forward, or do you want a hot goaltender? I'd take the goaltender personally in a playoff series. And I think, if Carey Price can get hot and look like the Carey Price of the past that we know he can be, I think it could be a pretty good series. And again, like, I'll be watching the Jets Flames series as well. It's always an interesting one. I like watching the Flames play. And then, yeah, I mean, I'd like to see the Leafs get eliminated in the first round. So I'll be watching the Blue Jackets as well, hoping Tortorella can pull off another playoff upset. But again, like, there's so much to like about all of these series, I think. And I think it's just, it's really good for the game, I think, so that they were able to come back. And it seems like all the players have bought into the hub idea. And, no positive test in the past 2 weeks. Like, that's really, really good to hear. You really like to see that. So, I mean, theoretically, they entered the hub with nobody having COVID. So you hope that they can continue that.
And do you see any players on the Minnesota Wild that could be a threat to the Canucks?
I mean, Kevin Fiala, right? Like, Kevin Fiala, he's a player. He's a really, really good player. And I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. And I think he could be a difference maker in this series. And a guy I really liked from what I saw the last time I saw him play against the Canucks was Marcus Foligno, right? And he's playing that style that everybody wants Jake Virtanen to play, and the one that we think Micheal Ferland's going to play. Like, that's how Marcus Foligno plays. Like, he plays hard, and he's in your face. Like, I think he could be a difference maker in this series.
This is the regular question now. Baseball's back. You're coming up the bat. What's your walk-up song? Anything?
Yeah, Green Onions from The Sandlot. That'd be my walk-up song. I don't know if you guys know that song, but it's all instrumental. It's the song that plays when those guys come up to the kids at the Sandlot, the like preppy baseball kids, and they play at the Sandlot. It's the "You Play Ball Like a Girl" scene. That scene where those kids ride up on their bikes. That's where that song's from. And yeah, when I played baseball, I always requested that as my goal song, my walk-up song, when given the opportunity at like tournaments and stuff. So yeah, that's always been it, and it always will be.
Excellent choice. And I haven't seen that movie in years. And Claude, what's the best Italian restaurant like in town, or at least that you've been to?
Yeah, I mean, in Burnaby, it's definitely Pasta Amore. That's Chris and I's place. We go there a lot. That's probably the best one. There's a lot downtown. I mean, there's too many to name. Like, I no free ads is what Chris and I always say, so I won't name too many. But again, like, there's some really, really good ones. There's some really bad ones as well. I don't want to name drop and ruin anybody's business, but there's some really bad Italian restaurants that say they're Italian restaurants. And yeah, I mean, it was funny because when Chris got here, like, the first place we went was Pasta Amore. And again, like Chris and I had met twice in person before. And you guys have to remember, like I've only known Chris for a year and we met on Twitter. Like Chris is the reason I got started writing at the Canuck Way. Like I DM'd him and said, hey, I think I have what it takes. I want to be given a platform. Like, can you help me get started? And then that was how I got started at Canuck Way. And then he went to Canucks Army and we stayed in touch during that time, worked together a few times on Canucks Convo. I would guest on the show every once in a while. And then it kind of blossomed into this friendship. And then he said he was coming to BCIT and we were like, wow, we're in the same program. We should definitely start working together. And that's exactly what we did. And yeah, I mean, that was the first place we went. And Chris is from Nanaimo and there's not many great Italian restaurants in Nanaimo. So I think the place I took him was Pasta Amore and he said it was the best Italian food he'd ever had.
And we got a listener. Ty, you want to ask this one?
I thought I was next in the order. Question from Andy. I ain't gonna say his Twitter name now. Where'd the nickname Quadfather come from?
So that comes from JD Burke. JD Burke is an absolute beauty. He's helped me a lot. Like, I think everybody kind of jokes around with JD because of his Twitter persona and everything like that. But JD Burke at his core is a really like genuine, helpful person. Like he's helped me so much. And I mean, it goes back to my Botchford project night, right? Like this was when I was meeting media and a lot of media members were willing to help me. And, JD Burke wasn't at Rogers Arena the night I was there, but he was messaging me on Twitter. I was following him. He wasn't following me. So he just followed me and said, hey, just want to introduce myself. Like, if you need anything, like, don't hesitate to reach out. And this is a guy who's the editor-in-chief of Elite Prospects. Like, he's busy, right? And he's a busy guy. And it was really nice of him to reach out like that. And I took advantage of it. I said, like, yeah, man, edit my Botchford Project article. How can I make this great? It's going on NHL.com. I don't want to screw this up. And he gave me some of the best feedback that I've gotten. And then same thing. I get the job at Canucks Army. I'm showing a little bit of, not fear, but Jackson McDonald was, again, like probably the best editor that I've ever had, right? That I've worked under. And I knew that I wanted to live up to what he was doing because I know all these contributors were, going from him to me. And I didn't want there to be a big drop off in the feedback they were getting or, the quality of the articles on Canucks Army. So, Jackson helped me as well, but JD saw that I was a little bit worried and kind of nervous about taking on the big editing role. Again, I was nervous and I put that stress on myself because I see Ryan Beach, Thomas Drance, JD Burke, these guys were all in this position and look what they're doing now. So, I mean, I was putting a lot of stress on myself because I was saying I got to live up to this. These guys were great at what they did and I want to be the same. So JD actually FaceTimed me, talked to me for an hour and gave me a crash course editing, an editing crash course, which was just absolutely fantastic. So helpful. I still have my notes that I took from that night written down. And I actually check them every once in a while because he gave me a lot of good little tips that I can share with my writers. And I mean, yeah, he's a great guy. And yeah, that's where that comes from. Cause he came on our podcast and he does this, Vito Corleone accent from The Godfather, and he goes, "Hey, whoa, please, Quadfather, please," and it's just, it's hard to explain, but that's where it comes from, JD Burke, and it's a pretty good nickname that's caught on.
And do you like the nickname?
I do. I don't mind it at all. I think it's pretty funny, especially every time I feel every time JD texts me, it starts with "Hey, whoa," and that's just how we communicate now. We talk like New York City Guidos, and I feel it goes without saying that my heritage is Italian, so that's where the last name comes from, and that's why he calls me the Quadfather.
David, thank you so much for doing this, and we love your work, and you're gonna go on to do great things, and you can follow David on Twitter at Quadrelli, and be careful. There's also another account from Argentina with the same username at Quadrelli. So you got to make sure it's David Quadrelli, not that Enrique guy from Argentina. I've made that mistake a bunch of times. And
Jeff Patterson made that mistake.
Yeah, he made that mistake
really
too.
Funny. Yeah, that was really funny.
And I just gotta say, all the work you put in, man. There's a reason you are where you're at in this world, and we're like very happy to have you on the podcast today. We'll say that.
Thank you. Yeah. Keep at it, guys. I really appreciate the kind words. But yeah, you guys just keep at it. Like, you guys are doing great work. You just, keep at it. Don't get discouraged when things don't go your way. Just, keep moving forward and make connections. Do all the right things, and it'll happen. Trust me.
All right. Before we let you go, we do this with every guest. Is there a particular song you would like to have for your intro when we introduce you?
Oh, you got to do Green Onions.
All right. We'll just do that then.
Yeah, it's Green Onions by Booker T and the MGs.
I think I'll just search up green onions, and it'll be like the first thing that pops up.
Yes, it should be okay.
All right, Quads, thank you so much for doing this, and keep at it and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, guys. You as well.
He rocks in the treetop all the day long, hopping and a bopping and a singing his song. All the little birds on Jaybird Street love to hear the robin go tweet, tweet, tweet. Rockin' Robin, tweet, tweet, rockin' Robin, tweet, blow rockin' Robin.
All right, welcome back. Time for the best and worst of Twitter. And unfortunately, no question period this week because we have no questions, mainly because I sent out the tweet way too late because I'm dumb and almost forgot. So, time for the best and worst of Twitter. I'll start us off. Here's one for worst. You become an adult when $1,000 feels like $20. At Kiaria Marin said this, and yeah, $1,000 doesn't feel much anymore, because when you're a kid, it feels like gold, but now it feels like pennies or nickels.
Ain't that true?
Yeah. Niels at STFU Niels says, people who ship male bandmates together are some of the weirdest. Can men not have friendships and being pressured as gay? And like, the fanfic is out of control. Y'all nasty. Yeah, this is categorized in worst. Well, could be in best too, because I agree with this 100%. Like from boy bands like BTS or One Direction or the Backstreet Boys, you got people shipping bandmates together and like writing fanfics on them. And I'll get this out of the way. Like fanfics are cool, but fanfics about like real people are not. Like, there are fanfics on bands, and even like the Canucks I've seen on the weird part of the internet. And yeah, fanfics about real people is a no-no. And it's fine if you have like someone in real life like make an appearance, like a cameo in them. That's okay, because I've done that before with like Marvel fanfics. I got like I made like a few hockey players make cameos when I was like in high school when I wrote those. But yeah, fanfics about real people, not good. And shipping like bandmates together, it like stop. Like you got people shipping like BTS members, not even just boy bands, like rock bands too. You got people shipping like Billy Joe Armstrong and Trey Cool, people shipping Matt Bellamy and Dominic Howard. It's just the worst. It just is. So Niels is right about that one. Oh, here's a good one from Snoop, the legend, primetime Snoop. So he replies to a tweet about the NBA players kneeling before the national anthem. He sarcastically replies with, "I no longer will be watching the NBA anymore. You've lost a valuable customer." And of course, Snoop gets a bunch of replies just saying how awful he is. But little do these people know that Snoop is just trolling, because that's what he does. And he likes to make fun of people, but in a good way. So, yeah, a lot of people don't know that Snoop is just joking, and for sure, he's down with players kneeling. And Snoop also says that the Canucks opening theme song, like intro song, should be Darude Sandstorm, or Sandstorm by Darude. Yeah, that instrumental song that just goes da 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 da. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, that one. It's a big meme in high school. And at Cryptic No One replies to a tweet saying that Chance the Rapper released a Big Day a year ago. He says should have been arrested immediately for dropping that. Yeah, that album sucked. It really sucked. And I like Chance the Rapper's previous albums like Coloring Book and what was it? My brain is the Acid Rain album or whatever it was called. But the Big Day sucked. It really did. And Fantano was right to give it a 0 out of 10. Because that album, there was nothing good about that album. It just sucked. And Elliot Friedman's beard made Twitter explode a few nights ago. And someone replied to me at Armchair GM1 comparing Elliot Friedman's beard with Joe Thornton's beard and Tom Hanks' beards from Castaway and Forrest Gump. Honestly, Elliot has the worst out of the four. Like, I don't know how to feel about it because I could hardly recognize him. And like many of us, Elliot's really let himself go during quarantine. Here's another one for worst. So, Ska, SKA, St. Petersburg. Apparently, according to Rick Dollywall, a bunch of players tested positive for the virus, and the actual team account tweeted that Rick Dollywall's tweet was fake news. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.
I don't know why you're going against Rick.
Exactly.
He's got his sources.
He's got plenty of sources, and I don't know how you can't trust the guy because he is a great reporter. He's got reliable sources, and people say Rick has never been wrong, but Rick has said that he's been wrong a few times in the past. But only
at least he can admit he's
at
wrong.
least he admits
like
he's
the
wrong.
Canucks GM.
Yeah, and I don't even remember a time where Rick Dollywall was wrong. To be honest, maybe I haven't been on Twitter long enough. But if you're a Canucks fan,
He's wrong. He admits it.
Yeah, and if you're a Canucks fan and if you don't trust Rick Dollywall's reporting, I don't know what to say. I don't. Here's a one for best. Canuck Clay Emu. He was on a boat with his family. He was like, "Hey, Canucks fans, I'm on a boat and all that." And then he yells like, "I don't know what I'm doing." Looks like Clay. Mr. Positive, the head of the GLCPC.
You can't hate that guy.
You can't hate that guy. And he looked like he was having a blast, and he was terrified. He also looked terrified while driving the boat. JD Burke says that he can do without 31 degrees at 8 p.m. Not a fan. I can too, because this heat is unbearable. It was hard to sleep too. Grady Sass says we should all appreciate Elias Pettersson embracing social media and showing off his personality. We need more of that in the sport. I agree. Hockey needs more personality and fun. And Elias Pettersson wearing the bucket hat and his tweets about basketball. It's a good start. And Mr. Booth, he made a Vancouver Canucks, a Friends-inspired Vancouver Canucks intro, and it's really good. And I'll end it with, oh no, I got two more. Thomas Drance is in the bubble in Edmonton, and he posted a picture. Then Uncle Elite replies with, "That's not what I saw in the video. Are you sure you're in Edmonton?" Yeah, I don't see the mountains, Drance. Where are they? That's not Edmonton. And I'll end it off with a picture of the shortest player in the NHL, Nathan Gerbe, alongside Zdeno Chara, which you all know is the tallest player in the NHL. And then people are saying that, please tell me that this wasn't done on purpose. And Gerbe himself tweeted the picture saying, "When dad has to separate you and your brother from fighting." Hashtag Photoshop. And I always wanted a picture with Gerbe and Chara together, and Finally got it. So that ends. So that all the tweets. Ty, do you have any? If
I've been in and out from Twitter. Let's
yeah,
just
that's
say.
all right. No questions this week because I was a fool. From our,
It happens. It's nothing to worry about, man.
yeah, and before we end it off, we got to give a shout out to the Broadscast for starting up. Sam, Georgia, Danielle, Mallory, and Vanessa. All great follows on Twitter. All have great hockey takes. And it's about time that Vancouver has its own all-female Canucks podcast. Like, there are hundreds of Canucks podcasts out there, including ours, but no female hosts, or no all-female hosts. And it's about time that has happened. And they've reached like over 1,000 followers on Twitter before they even dropped their first episode. They dropped their first episode this morning, and I really enjoyed it. And it was great to hear. So I'm glad that there's an all-female sports podcast in Vancouver, and it's about time we got one. Ty, do you have anything to say before we wrap up? Ty?
Ready to go, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So hope you enjoyed this week's episode. We will continue to do live streams, post-game live streams on Instagram because Periscope is so difficult. Our Instagram is Avid Discussers Podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at JoshuaRay91, and Ty is at TParty21. And that's also the same handles on Twitter. You can also find us on Facebook. Search up Avid Discussers Podcast. You can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can give us feedback through Twitter and through Twitter DMs. Feedback and criticism welcome. So we hope you enjoyed this episode. It's 10 episodes already. I can't believe it. And here's to much more. And peace out.